Warren Howe. I was lieutenant commander. I started with the Navy as a senior medical student at Washington University in St. Louis. That would have been in 1964, and they had a program where you could have your senior year paid for if you agreed to 3 years of service after, and so I took advantage of that. Knowing full well that I'd be drafted anyway, it being the Vietnam era. And so I did my senior year, and I did a civilian residency, a civilian internship at Philadelphia General Hospital, and then I went on active duty starting in July of 1966. Oh, one thing I tell you, as part of the senior medical student program, I spent a summer doing research at the Naval Medical Research Unit at Great Lakes, NAMRU 2, which was that was a good time. I was at that point, as I say, a medical student, and I did a research project at NAMRU 2 on the carriage of meningococcal the bacteria, meningococcus, in naval recruits. They were having lots of meningitis in the naval recruits. Meningitis is a disastrous disease. A person could go from being an active recruit on the parade ground in the morning to dead by afternoon with meningitis. And so it was a high priority to do something about it. We studied the carriage of meningococcus and found that in fact, there was a high degree of spread of this bacteria in the recruit population. Not everybody got meningitis from it, but we were looking at factors why it might be there, and my project noted that the resistance to the carriage of meningococcus decreased as the length of the training period increased. So it was a risk to be a naval recruit at the time. We wondered whether we weren't in fact causing problems. We gave every recruit got a dose of long-acting penicillin on arrival at the recruit depot. The idea being to reduce the carriage of streptococcus, which was caused a lot of disease, and we thought that perhaps the meningococcus was surviving that penicillin, and so it more easily spread because the other competing bacteria were knocked out. We never proved one way or the other whether that was the case, but my project was part of that. Well, from Great Lakes, I went back to medical school for my last year, and then I went to Philadelphia General for a civilian internship. Turned out to be a very good internship because it was kind of like combat conditions in a charity hospital in the city. And then I went on active duty after that to destroyers. When I was in Philadelphia, I knew that I was going to be going on active duty, so I decided to go down and talk to the detailer in Washington about where I might be assigned. And I had an appointment, walked into his office, and there was this very bored commander sitting there, a little unhappy actually, I think, at being there. And he looked up at me and he said, "Well, what do you want?" And I said, "Well, I just wanted to come down and talk to you about my assignment when I go on active duty." And he said, "Oh, what do you want?" And I said, "Well, I'd like sea duty." And he stopped and he looked at me and he said, "You what?" And I said, "I would like sea duty." And he said, "Oh, I can do that. Most of these docs come in here, they want to go to some research institute or Walter Reed or something. I send them all to the Fleet Marine Corps." He said, "But I can send you to sea." And he did. And I liked it. I spent my entire 3-year career at sea. And Then I went on active duty and was assigned to Com Desron 13 in Long Beach, California. And we deployed to the Western Pacific, and I spent most of that year either transiting to or from Westpac or steaming in a 5-mile circle in the North Gulf of Tonkin doing plane guard duty. The ship I spent most of my time on was the USS England, DLG-22. And I also moved from destroyer to destroyer, so I spent time on the Edson, spent time on the Isabel. Those were two of the main ones that I sailed on. I was on the Edson when it was shelled from North Vietnam and got hit. That was an interesting experience. As Winston Churchill said, nothing like being shot at without effect to stimulate you. The England was what was called a frigate in those days. It was really a light cruiser, and it was mainly a missile platform for anti-aircraft missiles. It also had ASROC capabilities on it as well. It was a nice ship. It was nice, clean lines, and a very pretty ship. It had quarters for the Commodore, or the squadron commander, and his staff. So I had a pretty nice place to stay, and it was a very functional ship. A very small sick bay. The sick bay was probably about 12 by 12 feet, and that was it. And we were able to accomplish a lot there. When we got to the Gulf of Tonkin, several times I took care of pilots that we'd pulled out of the water off North Vietnam, and took care of them in that 12 by 12 sick bay. Worked well. We took the pilot down to the sick bay and obviously checked to be sure that there were no serious physical problems. And then I kind of stepped back, and we had a marine intelligence group there. They had a helicopter on board. They had a marine pilot and a couple of marine officers whose duty was to debrief that pilot immediately upon. And so I just got out of the way as soon as we were sure that physically the pilot was okay. And we picked up a couple of Navy pilots. Picked up one Air Force pilot, which was interesting because of course, his jargon was different than all of ours. We occasionally, I did have one point toward an air medal because this helicopter I told you about that was on the fantail of our ship, which we would fly off to retrieve sailors. Occasionally, it would be vectored toward something when I was on board. And one day, the chaplain and I were making house calls, and we got vectored to try to pick up a pilot on the beach in North Vietnam. We didn't pick that pilot up, but we did penetrate North Vietnam. So I was, I got a quick instruction how to use the 50 caliber machine gun, and the chaplain was doing his prayer thing. He almost sure it was captured and POW, or may have been killed in action. Hard to know. I never did get a specific report on that person. But it was a very functional ship. We only shot missiles off a couple times, and they were all in practice sessions. Never had to use one to defend the ship or the task force. But it was pretty impressive when they went off. General quarters was amidships in the sick bay, and my secondary would be in the wardroom as the battle dressing station. Food was uniformly good, both in the enlisted. As part of my duties or my self-assigned duties, I went down and went through the chow line with the enlisted men now and again, just to check and see what was going on. I also went around to the various ships in the squadron and once a week or so, and looked to see what was going on in those ships. figuring that the medical officer ought to be able to do that. The Commodore liked me doing that. I recall one time we were in Hong Kong, and the Commodore of our squadron was the senior officer present, and so I wound up having to make rounds in the local hospital for any naval personnel who happened to be in the civilian hospital in Hong Kong, and we had the laborious task of going to a tea in honor of the Queen once while there in Hong Kong. Those don't happen anymore since Hong Kong's become communist. But that was an interesting sidelight. We had let's see, there was the Edson and the Arnold J. Isbell, which were the two that I was in port with most. Sammy Moore was Samuel Moore destroyer was another one, and the rest of them I didn't get to because they were all off by the time I came on board. So those were the ones: England, Isbell, Edson, Sammy Moore. Well, I liked the Edson because the commanding officer, whose name I do remember, Jay Vermilia, was a connoisseur of curry, and he insisted on every Wednesday at lunch in the wardroom having curry with, and he required that the stewards bring the curry powder and the condiments to him for inspection before lunch. I always was sure to be inspecting the medical spaces on the Edson for lunch on Wednesdays, and the curry was wonderful. We started, it was around January of, yeah, it would have been January of '67. We started in Long Beach. We went via Hawaii to Vietnam, and we spent most of the time, as I say, steaming in a 5-mile circle in the North Gulf. We got involved in Operation Sea Dragon there. The only thing I know about Sea Dragon is that it was interdiction of waterborne logistics in the along the coast of North Vietnam, and every night we'd plot shore bombardment coordinates for the various ships and airplanes that did this. And the duty of the chaplain traveled with me. The duty of the chaplain was to sit and keep records in the wardroom while this was going on. Every day was kind of felt part of the war effort. For one period of time, I was on the Edson, and as I say, we got shelled from North Vietnam when the ship strayed inside of the known envelope of some shore guns that they had. We had about 13 casualties on board. The shells hit the tripod mast on the Edson, and luckily the Commodore, who usually took a nap after midday meal, didn't take a nap that day, and there was a large hunk of metal that was on penetrated into his pillow from that. The Edson had a very lightweight superstructure, so it was penetrated very easily. Anyway, we got those casualties all put back together again. No fatalities, and that went well. Then back on the England, the Commodore later in that actually got assigned to investigate an at-sea collision between the USS Repose, the hospital ship, and an oiler that had been oiling. It turned out that the Repose's steering mechanism failed, and anyway, that was going to take about 2 months to accomplish, and so I said to Commodore that I didn't really want to sit around Subic Bay for 2 months doing nothing. Why don't you send me TAD to to Da Nang, and so I spent 6 weeks at Naval Hospital Da Nang on TAD, which was a fascinating experience. You know, war is not a pleasant thing, but to see the way that mass casualties like that were being handled and such, just an amazing experience. So I'm glad I got to do that. I didn't get engrossed in the culture of Vietnam at all, because I was on a very secure spot that was segregated from combat areas. The only combat we saw was helicopters coming in with blood flowing out of them while they unloaded casualties. The duties I had were, since they didn't know who I was and I was just there for a short time, I did really menial duties. I wasn't involved in doing anything more than maybe being second assistant in surgery. I noticed that when casualties were received in the hospital, the doctors didn't see them when they came in. That they were entirely resuscitated by corpsmen who had learned to do this well. It was a very mechanical process. Dealing with, up until the time they got injured, were very healthy people, and so it was, resuscitation was a by the numbers routine, and they did very well. A soldier arriving at Naval Hospital Da Nang, who still had a pulse, had a 99% chance of survival. So they were good. But I just did routine medical stuff that was not really terribly critical. We even had North Vietnamese casualties brought in, and they were treated with the same care that an American would be treated, and the treatment was good. I'm sure that in many cases they would be surprised because clearly they did not take very good care of people they captured from our side. So I think they probably would have been surprised, because it was high quality care. Then we left there in I think late July of '67, and as soon as we get back to Long Beach, I was detached to go to the Simon Lake. George Ellis, the commanding officer of the Simon Lake, we were there in the Holy Loch, and the only really naval facility in that area which had medical facilities. And during a NATO exercise, a fleet oiler had a sailor on board who had joined that ship in the States, was coming, and then they came across the North Atlantic, and this sailor was seasick from the minute he put foot on the ship all the way across the ocean. He couldn't eat, couldn't hold anything down. He was on IVs that the corpsman had been administering. And they got to the Holy Loch, and they sent him over to our sick bay for evaluation. Well, I took one look at this emaciated, dehydrated, really miserable sailor, and I got the history that he had, and I evaluated him. He wasn't seriously ill at that point, but clearly he was not going to be able to do naval service, and there's a provision in the manual of the medical department for discharging such a person administratively if they prove to have intractable seasickness. And so I said, look, son, you're just not going to be able to stay in the Navy. We're going to send you back to your ship. I won't cut your orders. We're going to get your stuff, you bring it back here, we'll arrange your transportation back to the States, and you'll be discharged. And he said, well, my commanding officer won't like that. And I said, what do you mean? He said, my commanding officer told me that he was sure I could be saved for the Navy despite my seasickness. I said, well, I don't think that's the case, so for your safety and the Navy's well-being, you're going to be discharged. And I sent him back, and about a half an hour later, I hear ding, 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 Chuckawan arriving, when the captain of this fleet oiler had arrived. And about a half an hour after that, my phone rang, and the captain's yeoman said, Doc, the captain wants to see you in his stateroom. And I said, I know what this is about. And so we went up to George Ellis's stateroom, and George said, Doc, this is the captain of the Chuckawan. He wants to talk to you about the sailor you just sent back over. I said, okay. So the captain explained to me that how he really thought this sailor didn't need to be discharged and would be perfectly okay in the Navy and such. And after he finished his explanation, I said, well, Captain, I evaluated him just about 40 minutes ago, and I gave you the opinion that I thought that he shouldn't be kept in the Navy and he should be administratively discharged. I said, I can't change that opinion, but I would be happy to reevaluate him now and see whether my opinion has changed, but I'll bet it hasn't. At which point Captain Ellis leaned over to this other captain and said, see, what did I tell you? Absolutely backing his people up, and the kid was successfully administratively discharged from the Navy, and hopefully his life was better than being on continuous IVs. I remember, for instance, one time on the Simon Lake when I was I was the medical officer, and I wanted to make a few minor modifications in the configuration of the sick bay. And in order to do that, you had to get permission from the damage control chief, who oversaw the integrity of the ship. Well, so Chief Kesterson came into my office. He was a grizzled old guy who had several ships shot out from underneath him during the Second World War. A Navy through and through, had been for his whole life. And he sat down, what do you want, Doc? And I said, well, I really want to put this door in a slightly different configuration. He muttered, hatch. And then I got on with this conversation further, and I said, and I really don't like the surface on the floor. And he said, deck. And I said, now I want to hang a curtain that's retractable between these two walls. And he said, bulkhead. And I said to myself, you know, he's not trying to correct me. He's translating what I'm saying into language that he can understand. And it's exactly what was going on. That was kind of an eye-opening experience for me as a young officer. We all tell sea stories, and they all get to be exaggerated as time goes on. But we had fun times, and to just bring up any specific stories, that's hard to say. But we do share a lot of good time. I'm here for this reunion right now, and these people are all people that I cherish. Some of them I served with. People that I really cherish are the commanding officer of the Simon Lake, George Ellis, who was just a wonderful person, who was so very supportive of everything that his subordinates did to serve the Navy. He was just a good man. Bob Maxwell, his successor, was a good one. Commodore Hugh McClure, who was the Commodore of Desderon 13 when I was there, another fine person, and just more other officers than I could begin to name. The Navy really was a family. I would have stayed in the Navy at the end of my obligated service had the Navy at that time been interested in primary care medicine. They weren't. They wanted highly specialized physicians, and I wanted to be a primary care doc. And so I got out to pursue training in primary care.